conversation of vision, because I think that teachers are leaders, right? I mean, you have susceptible youth in front of you every day. You're molding the minds of you know, of students. Sometimes in the classroom of 10, sometimes the classroom has 20. Sometimes these days the classroom has as many as 30 students there. You know, and so I'm gonna ask you the question that Dr. Ani says we should ask anybody who purports to be a leader. What is your vision for our people? So I want to know how you think about that when you're in front of students.
The Giver, you know, a very popular book, and you know, one section that they were reading, I mean, The Giver, if you're not familiar with that storyline in a nutshell, is you know, it's kind of a dystopia. You know, there's a giver there's a giver and a receiver. The receiver has received all the knowledge. No one else is allowed to read. There's this supposed inequality, but it's really ignorance, and he has to pass that information on to a receiver, who also will be allowed to read books, but the only person. Everyone else in the society can't read. And so he's in the process of giving the receiver this information, and he talks about one of his science teachers and what he's learned about the brain in the science class, and he talks about, you know, the synapses and the electrical pulses and all of that, and the giver says they know nothing. And he's like, what do you mean they know nothing? Like, no, they were telling us about how the brain works. He's like, yeah, but they have no meaning behind it. It's not enough simply to have information. And so when I think about my vision for my students, it's not just to impart information. It's really to give it context, you know, make meaning out of it so you can use it to serve you and the people who matter to you. If you can't do that with it, then, you know, like the giver said, I don't care if you passed all the tests in the world, you know nothing.
So with that being said, and all the stuff that's going on, I mean, I've contended a long time that education is one of the seminal battlefields right now, not just economically, right? Because this country has run out of economic terrain, and so it's cannibalizing itself by really trying to make economies out of what had traditionally been publicly delivered goods and services, which is why there's such a fight right now for public education, right? Because it's a new market. But not only is it a market, it's one of the forefronts, one of the primary theaters on the battlefield for consciousness, and whoever controls your mind controls your body. That's my theory. So as this unfolds, given the situation kind of going on with Ms. Zuniga, what's going on in Atlanta, what's going on with education overall, and this idea that we need vision, I just want to figure out how you, as a relatively young teacher, see your role if at the end of the day we're trying to empower our people as human people, but African descended people in particular. How do you make sense of all this as you go into a classroom knowing that you have the minds of the future of our people in your hands?
Yeah, and then especially being I'm a chemistry teacher, by the way, in East Orange. So, you know, there's this huge STEM push, right? They're trying to define success for us, and they're trying to define it as a career in either, you know, a technological pursuit or, you know, a medical pursuit. I was a pharmacy student before I became an education student, and while I loved the science, there was no context. I'm like, so I'm going to do this at the end of the day to like count pills and just give it to, like, where's the meaning, where's the where's the context, how do I apply, you know, the history and the sociology that I know to my everyday work with this profession? That context was never given to me. I think it's possible, it was just never given to me. I need to give that to my students, so that I don't think it necessarily matters what field you're in, but with that consciousness, I think you can apply it in ways that serve. That really does have to be the ultimate purpose for what I'm doing. And so specifically now, I've given you like a general ideology. What I'm trying to do right now is bring more literacy into the science classroom. So it's not enough for us to, you know the formulas and know how to apply them and solve for the right answer. It's not enough for us to, you know, to blow stuff up in lab. I know it's cool, but that's not enough. Right. We really do have to provide all kinds of context, and literacy is going to have to be the main vehicle to do that. I don't want to say it's the only way. It's certainly my preferred way. I read and I write. I don't see a way around that, and all students need to be challenged to do that too, and that's happening. That's happening in a lot of campuses.
It's good to know that our future, at least at the level of contemplation, consideration, and consciousness, that there are brothers and sisters in the teaching profession who are still having these dialogues, these connections, man. Because I don't know if people know the statistics, but our presence among as teachers of our students is diminishing.
And
at record numbers that we need to.
And we need to keep track of those numbers. We really do. We really do. We've diminished significantly in this profession. I mean, like the numbers I know.
Sometimes people say 85%.
Yeah,
and higher in urban black areas.
Yeah, if you look at pre-Brown numbers, pre-Brown versus Board, which I think the anniversary is this month as well. To now has decreased significantly. Maybe from, I think we were 17% of the teaching population back then. It's at least been chopped in half.
Yeah.
But we need to keep track of those numbers.
So you got that. Then you also had the New York Times article with something we've been saying forever, that about 1.5 million missing black men, right?
Yes.
So we're missing. We better start waking up, because we're missing from key aspects of our lives. Thank you, Brother Ike, for joining us, having this conversation.